Hey there, it's Dan Kenner with episode number 103 of The Casual Author. Today we're talking to Lynn Lipinski about having a good attitude and how that can help you win in your authoring, even if things are a little bit discouraging. We get a little bit real with the indie author talk, a little bit raw, so to speak, with how things aren't always cherries and roses with respect to writing. But that doesn't mean that we can keep going. That doesn't mean that we can still find joy in the things that we're doing as authors. So I think you're going to really enjoy that conversation. Stick around for that. Now, it's been a little bit of time since I've made a podcast, and that is just because the holidays got a little bit crazy in preparation for 2024, as well as just taking some time with the family. So I originally intended on just skipping the week of Christmas, just the week of December 25th, but with the new year rolling around and all the things going on in the family, I figured, you know what, let's just skip it for the beginning of January as well. And we'll pick back up this week. So that's why we are here today. So I hope you weren't too disappointed when you were waiting for an episode and it did not come up. Things are going to be a little bit different this year. I've been reflecting on my 2024 and how I want to shift things, adjust things to try to make it work. Life continues to move on. We've got a lot going on in life. There's a lot of changes in our family as well that we're going to be adjusting to this year. So just trying to figure out what I can do to not feel so overwhelmed with everything and continue providing you the content and the joy that you find, hopefully, in listening to this podcast. So that being said, eventually, I don't think I'm going to be doing the beginning of this year, but eventually I'm considering shifting this once again back to the bi-weekly just to give myself an extra week for editing and whatnot for the podcast. So I think that's going to come a little bit later. I'm not too worried about that right now. But I'll give you a heads up when I do say, all right, then the next episode won't be the following week, just so you're not surprised about it. But yeah, in homestead news, it's winter, so things are very slow. It's getting quite cold. We're now looking at single digits and negative degree weather for the most part. Now, during the day, it's going to get up in the 20s, which is excellent. I feel like this time last year, we were looking at highs in the single digits and lows in the negative. Now, that could still be coming right around the corner. Beginning of February. It was very cold last year. So, that being said, I probably will stop milking soon. I'm still milking one goat, Adele. She's our best goat, and that is just to help transition our daughter who is still nursing. She's a year old now. She's still nursing. We're transitioning her off of that, for various reasons. And she loves nursing, so it's tricky. But we need to provide her with a healthy alternative. So goat's milk is a great thing. That's why I'm still milking her, and she does like it. It took her a while to warm up to it, but I think she's come around to it. That's why I'm persisting, even though it's very cold. Normally, by now, we would have stopped milking. Adele's a really good goat, though. She's very sweet. She does provide about a quart of milk per day, so nothing super crazy. And it doesn't take me too long to milk her. So I appreciate the time to pause and think. That's a good time for me to reflect on my books and decide, where I might want the story to go. It's the really prime thinking time so that when I do get to the actual writing of the book, I feel charged and ready to go. I don't feel lost or confused about where I want to take the book. Granted, I don't write anything down. Obviously, you can't when you're busy milking. Uh, but generally, it primes my brain, and I do like to write in the morning. So, anyway, it usually works out that way. But I'm trying to think if there's anything other than that update wise, other than we're drowning in eggs, which is a good problem to have. Because if you asked me 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we had not nearly enough eggs for our needs. Now we're getting about 12 to 17 eggs per day, which I know sounds like a lot, but we are a big family. We do eat a lot of eggs. Whenever we make a meal of eggs, we're looking at 15 to 17 eggs just for, that one meal. Obviously, we can't eat eggs for every meal because we'd go crazy, but still, we're keeping up on them pretty well. That being said, we are going to have to move into some type of preservation method soon uh, because they're building up quite a bit. Once again, good problem to have. Absolutely no complaint. We'll probably be looking at hatching out eggs. Probably not soon. I would think in the next couple of months. We have two roosters that we've kept, these beautiful red feathered roosters that I think will hopefully make some great baby chicks. We'll have to see how that goes. We hatched eggs last year and the hatch weight was very small. So see if we can get a better hatch rate this year. Other than that, yeah, once again, just surviving. I have made the decision to for the authoring to go to an authors conference actually down in Provo, Utah. So I'll be going down south at the in the middle of February. It's February, I want to say 15th to the 17th, and this is my first writers conference. So I'm trying not to feel too anxious about it. I'm a relatively introverted person. I can handle one-on-one conversations very well. This is going to be a room with a lot of people, just the expo room, but that's not even including all the classes and everything and sitting. I'm the type of person that has to sit at the back of the room just to tone down my anxiety because there's something about someone staring at the back of my head that stresses the heck out of me. It's so stupid. I know it makes no sense whatsoever, but I will be distracted if there's anybody behind me. Now I've gotten a little bit better about it. I can handle a little more than I used to when I was in college. But yeah, I prefer to sit on the back row. I'm one of those back row listener kids. I don't sit back there so I can be distracted. I sit back there so I can actually focus. Regardless, we'll see how that goes. The preparation for it is proving far more challenging. Actually, it's about as challenging as I expected it to be. So I'm considering, all of the decorations and designing banners and swag and all sorts of fun stuff. It's I mean over my head. I'll say that. I'm not sure how this other fellow author roped me into it. I'm glad he did. I'm sure it's going to be great, but at the same time, whew, feels like a lot. So if you're around Provo, Utah, in the middle of February, I'm going to LTUE. That's the conversation, or that's the conference. Apparently, it's the one that Brandon Sanderson attests to helping him become successful. So I know that they get around 1,200 attendees every year. So yeah, it should be really interesting. Hopefully, I at least learn a lot from it. I'm maybe not expecting to sell a ton. I'd love to sell a ton, but it's hard to say. An author nobody knows about. But I get to meet up some of the people that I've been having in my writing group for some time. So that's very exciting. Other than that, I've continued to write Demon Blooded. I am at about 100,000 words now. Story wise, I'm probably about, I want to say 85 to 90% done with it. There's still a little bit more to do. So more than likely, it's going to be around 110 to 115, probably 118. I know myself, 118,000 words. So we're getting close to wrapping that up. After that, because I think I'm still trying to punt off editing other books as long as humanly possible. I will most likely go and take a look at potentially writing the second book of the unnamed series. It's an epic fantasy series. The first book is The Etcher's Plight. I have the names of the second and third and kind of the fourth book. It's a little hazy, the fourth book, but I said epic fantasy trilogy. It's not a trilogy. It's a, what do you even call that? A quadrilogy? I just made that up. Regardless, it's going to be 4 books. I'm considering writing the second book of that. I need to keep rolling with the creative juices. And I need to revisit my plan for 2024 just to recoup some of the costs that I've spent on it. I recognize that it's not unusual for it to be expensive, but revisiting that plan and trying to get to a point where I can build up some of the money from sales and other events and whatnot so that I can dump back into the editing because editing is just so expensive. It's great because it's an excellent service. It's just a little bit pricey. So that's kind of the plan for 2024. After I'm done with Demon Blooded, I did submit Darkness Incarnate, which is my short story that I submitted for Writers of the Future Q1. It's already January 8th. I know that sounds so funny, but I just need to be cognizant of the end of Q1 date cutoff for Q2. I want to write a short story, minimally one per quarter. I have no ideas what I'm going to write, but that's generally how I write. They just come to me and I write them as they come. So Darkness Incarnate was out of the blue, just had this like tiny conceptual idea, and suddenly it was a 14,500 word story. So I'm not too worried about where I'm going to get the story. I've got hundreds of ideas in my brain. It'll come when I just sit down and start writing, which I'm looking forward to. Let's see. In terms of other author news, nothing on that front. So we can go ahead and shift over to the interview portion of the podcast with Lynn. Hey, Lynn, how are you today?
I am awesome. How are you doing, Dan?
Doing excellent as well. Just been out working with heated waters with my chickens, and now I'm in and excited to talk to you about authoring and the things you've experienced. I love picking the brains of other authors. And you're an indie author as well, correct? Is that what I understand?
Yeah. I
Okay.
kind of do it all myself.
Yes, we'll get into all that fun stuff. Before we dive into the fun stuff, how long have you been writing and publishing?
I think I published my first book, Bloodlines, in 2015.
Okay.
So, however long that is, 8 years. I'm not a math person. I don't.
We're authors. We don't do math. We Google math when we need it for our books, right? Um, so did it take you a while to write that actual story, or was it a pretty quick write into straight into publishing in 2015?
Oh my gosh. That first book took me 10 years to write. I
Oh,
had
okay. So a little long.
it was it well, I think I learned how to write a novel writing Bloodlines. And so like I can go look at the first drafts of that, which I thought were pretty great. That I remember I hired a developmental editor to read, and it was kind of like she's like, "Oh gosh, you've got so many problems. This is anyway, I look at that first draft and I just cringe. So it really took me 10 years to kind of learn how to write, learn how to put a story together, learn how to write in the mystery genre in a way where the story made sense. And yeah, but then all the other ones, they come pretty quick. Like you learn it, you learn how to
Hmm.
do it, and then you know how to do it.
Now, I've never written a mystery. I've read mysteries. I like mysteries. But I'm in a writing group with a mystery author, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure I have the mind for it. So, if you don't mind me asking, are you a plotter? Do you generally plot out your mysteries before you write them, or are you a discovery writer?
Oh, discovery for sure. With always usually an idea of how it's going to end,
Okay,
which I think but a lot of room in between to kind of get there, and sometimes a couple of the novels not really knowing who was going to be the killer, because you have like a mystery needs like four or five suspects.
sure.
um and there I've a few of the books, I think, like Bloodlines, I was playing around with kind of how it was going to end and who was going to be the culprit at the end, a lot while I was doing those drafts over 10 years. So
So how did you, I mean, I think it's amazing that in that 10 years you were able to learn what you needed to get to a published ready place. This is kind of a weird question, but how did you know it was ready? Because, 10 years is, yeah, a lot of time to noodle over something. And in my case, I would just second guess myself the entire time. So how did you reach that confidence level after 10 years? Okay, this is ready for publishing now.
that's like a great question, because I'm not sure I know.
Oh, okay. It's okay.
Well, so it had multiple edits, right? This probably had um, four developmental edits. Four. So I
My
think by
goodness.
the probably it was probably just that iterative process of like, well, it's
Mm,
getting better every draft. And I was just listening to one of your other podcasts with KG Barrage, who talked about this idea of getting better with every book. And I was thinking,
mhm.
well, I got better with every draft. So probably by that fourth one, I was thinking, yeah, this is hanging together pretty well. And I actually tried to get an agent and tried to sell it. At that time, I thought it was good. And it's one of the things that happened when I was really trying to pitch it, because I didn't really want to have to publish it myself, because it seemed like a lot of work, which it
Mm.
is. But I kept insisting to the agents that I was pitching, that this was a standalone book, that I didn't want to write a series. And I had no idea like how naive that was, to be trying to pitch a mystery novel standalone. I think most people are just like, okay, well, most of these come in, they're like assuming I'm doing a series.
Hmm.
And so I wound up saying, okay, fine, I believe in the story. I'll self-publish it myself. And I did. And I put it out as a standalone book. And it did pretty well. Like that's my book that has always sold. Um, but I did realize later, it's like, oh, I see why they wanted me to have a series, because that's the way you continue to build on that success. And so I wound up turning it into a series down the road, like in 2018, I think, or 2019. I was like, well, I guess I should turn it into a series too. So it was like a big learning. So for all those people out there who think they're writing standalone mystery novels, just really, a series is how you're going to make money. Write it as a series. Just at least do 3 books.
Well, I just want to
That's
highlight
my big
a
tip.
couple of things. I love that tip. I think as indie authors, first off, I love that we have the ability and the power to make those changes. I mean, traditionally published can too. Like they can decide, oh, I'll write more later. But when you've got contractual things, it can be a little bit more tricky to navigate. With indie
Yeah.
authors. It's just like, yeah, sure, I'll just tack this on later. And it's great that we have that ability. We can publish it in our own timeline. There's the flexibility is
Mhm.
just very nice. I actually do have a standalone. It's not a mystery, but I wrote a standalone, and I knew that there might be a chance I'd write more, so I left it open ended enough that I could turn it into a
Mhm.
series. But it's just one of those things like, oh, that's a later time. Maybe I'll come back and write more for that. Um, but obviously success is measured differently by every author, which is excellent. I mean, your perception of success will help you reach
Mhm.
whatever goals you have. But you mentioned your first book did very, very well. And then I know when we were talking prior to this podcast, you mentioned that you've struggled a little bit to find that same success with later books. I just want to talk a little bit about that and your experience there.
Sure. I'll go ahead and drop some numbers, which I think can be
Sure.
informative to people, right? And so, because there's always going to be the people who sell less than you and go, "Oh my God, she sold a lot of books," and then there's all the
It's
people
true.
above you who go, "Oh, that's really cute." So
It's
I'll
true.
go ahead and drop those numbers. So when I talk about Bloodlines being the book that always sold the best, it sold about 1,000 books in the first year. For an indie author coming out of nowhere who doesn't know anything and doesn't know you're supposed to write series, like I always was pretty impressed with that. Like I was like, it
Hmm.
sold 1,000 books in the first year. I have not quite been able to replicate that with the other books. And I released God of the Internet the following year. God of the Internet, I wrote in like 3 months, by the way. So it
Oh, wow.
definitely gets faster.
Yeah, that's fast.
That it got fast. So I put that out also as a standalone after trying to sell it and not having any luck, probably because I was also insisting it was a standalone. Um, so that book was the one that got some critical acclaim. I was really excited. It got named to the Kirkus Reviews like best of indie 2016 list, and they gave it a starred review, which is their biggest thing. And I had just had a lot of high hopes. Like that book got on some different lists of like, this is a really good indie thriller. And, I can't even remember what the book sales were on that because they didn't impress me. After I sold 1,000 books of Bloodlines in one year, the God of the Internet never really hit that height. And then since then, I put out the sequels to Bloodlines, and again, they're not quite hitting. I mean, I think if I run a promo, like if I do a free book or a 99-cent book, I can kind of get close. I think I might have gotten close on Serpent Loop, but knowing that like a lot of those were free, right? They were
Hmm.
free, so I don't know if that counts. But I really sold for money, 1,000 books of the first one, and anyway, it's just been a challenge, and I just don't, I guess like you were talking with was it KJ Barrage too? Like there's just this element of luck. There's just luck, and maybe I don't have that anymore, but we'll just keep plugging away.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there's so many ways that we could take this because the challenges of the actual marketing and selling piece can be very what's what I'm looking for, discouraging, right? Particularly when you're
Hmm.
someone who has this passion for writing and getting these stories to readers so they can just be entertained. Before we, take a leap down there, I am curious to know, were you doing any type of like ads or what were you doing when you published Bloodlines that maybe helped it find that audience, or was it just kind of natural? Did you just publish it and some minor social media things?
No, so I think ads played a big part in that. And this was 2015, back when Facebook ads worked really, really, really well.
Okay, sure.
So I would say it was a selection of Facebook ads. It was kind of working with some like newsletters and book club things that I don't even know if one or two of them even exist anymore. But
Mm,
it was like this at that time. You could people had book clubs, and you could sign up. You would give them free copies of the book for their book club, and then they would post reviews. And I think I also put the book on NetGalley back then to give
mm,
people like you have to pay for that, but to get people to read. They have kind of a group of people who like to review new books, and they do it for free. But you have to pay NetGalley to get a listing on NetGalley. But then the reviews people will do for free, and I think that those things really helped. And I guess when I talk about not being able to replicate the success, some of that is too, like, Facebook changed after the 2016
Yeah.
election, and like it just doesn't, those ads just don't work as well, or they don't work for me as well. So that's one thing I've had a hard time recreating.
Well,
I
I mean,
I
that's
just
yeah, please continue.
oh, I was just going to say, I think one of the dumbest things I did in running those Facebook ads is that I ran them through this woman who was helping me at the time. I ran them through her Facebook page, and one of the dumbest things I didn't do was run the ads through my own author Facebook page and build up that Facebook page. That was probably the dumbest thing I did back then, because I got that book wound up, being popular, and like I could have wound up with a really big Facebook following off of that book and that that all that money I spent on the ads. But I didn't do it. And I have like 100 followers on Facebook. So thank you very much.
Well, I think majority of my Facebook followers are friends and family, which is no complaint. I think that's amazing.
Right.
But I think that's a little bit more of a, hey, we just want to support you less. So like we're actually interested in what you're writing, which once again, not a problem. That's totally fine. But yeah, that's the challenge with indie publishing, right? Is it's up to us to learn and figure out what works and what
Mhm.
doesn't. There's plenty of people like Mark Doss and Joanna Penn,
Mhm.
Brian Cohen, that have all of these help things, but unless you know about them, you have to find them. It's a really isolating practice to be an indie author. And so when you make those, I made plenty of mistakes, and I go over so many mistakes. I'm like, well, wish I hadn't done that. But now I know, right? And so it's podcasts like these that help
Yeah.
people who are in the beginning phases of publishing to hear,
Mhm.
oh, Lynn said this. I should probably think about that, if I'm getting into
Mhm.
Facebook ads. I've never tried Facebook ads, admittedly. Okay, I think I tried one. It was like an Instagram ad. Didn't have a ton of success, and so didn't go with it again. But so have you I know Facebook has changed, which is, part of the problem.
Mhm.
But it seems like you've focused a little bit more of your time on other methods of social media as of late for trying to get your book out there. Have you dabbled in Amazon ads at all by any chance?
I have tried them again, not a huge amount of success with the
Hmm.
Amazon ads. I feel, and I've taken the Mark Dawson course and still not been able to unlock the key there. And yeah, so I haven't had a lot of luck with those. They should work, right? I don't know.
I mean, you would
Do you have luck with them?
no, no. To be clear, I don't either. So if I had secrets, I would totally share them. It's I've been going through Brian Cohen's ad school recently, and
Oh,
there's some things that are interesting there. I haven't unlocked the success there quite yet either. But I think a lot of what you said, when I talked to KJ and I've talked to other authors who indicated, there's an element of luck. And so
yeah.
I want to talk to you because you've been writing for a while, you've been publishing for a little while. Things have changed drastically from 2015 to today. How do you
Mhm.
continue going, feeling, with the discouragement of not having that luck? I mean, what keeps you driving forward?
Oh, that's a great question. It's hard to find that motivation, I think, and and when the joy comes out of writing, I'm in some of the Facebook groups, where authors talk, and there was a post that really resonated with like somebody who was just giving up. She'd written, I don't even know how many books, but she's like, I just kind of think I'm going to quit. I'm not having fun anymore, and I think that I'm still having a little bit of fun writing stories. Like I'm working on a series that's about a shapeshifter private detective in Burbank, which is where I live, California, and I've got about 40,000 words down, and I haven't really been able to get back into it. I'm in a part where you have to bring a lot of strings together, plot strings
Mm,
together, and like those are hard, right? Like you're
hmm.
not always sure how you're going to do it, so it's stalled out a little bit. And I think, I'm still having fun putting stories together. And so, you know, I guess that's where I find the motivation. Like if it stops being really fun, but what's not fun is the marketing. And so I guess that's kind of like this woman on Facebook I'm talking about. I think, you just get down. I'm like, well, I mean, Dan, honestly, I had a book come out on October 30th, Cryptic Inheritance. And
There
I've
it
not
is.
I've not had the energy to publish it, to really do much promotion of it. And guess what? It's not really selling because it turns
Hmm.
out you need to promote things. And And I don't know. So it's like a back and forth, right? The love of writing, the kind of teeth gritting part of promotion, and do you still want to do it? And I guess I'm just in an in between space.
Okay, no, I have been there for a while. Full
Yeah.
disclosure, because I can toss some numbers out well for anybody, also for anybody who's listening. This is just based on Amazon, so I publish my books wide. In To be completely
Okay.
frank, the management of that is challenging enough as it is. I don't know. I could look at my numbers on like Google Play and Apple Books and all these other places. I think it's relatively negligible, honestly, but
Sure.
I published 5 books as well, and so far I've sold from Amazon just over 1,000. In 2020 was when I published my first book, so not a ton, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
I'm
It's
with yeah.
no complaints. I would say
Yeah.
that a majority of not a majority, probably at least a third of those were 99-cent sale books.
Mhm.
So the revenue isn't going to match up on that front. Now I tell you this because it's one of those things where, because independent publishing is not only challenging, it can be quite expensive. I've reached this point where it's like, okay, I'm at a crossroads where I don't really have any more money to publish any more books. If I'm going to, I need to start getting something out of these books to help fund future
Yeah.
books. But I still love the writing aspect of it. And I remember my wife asked me,
Mhm.
well, Dan, why don't you just, if you love the writing piece, why don't you just write books and then that's it? Like, don't do anything with them. And, I reflected on that and I was just like, I can't do that. Right. Because yes, the part of it, of the writing is fun, but what's the point? Like I would write for
Mhm.
myself, which sure, that's awesome. But why write something if nobody can enjoy it? So that kind of helped. It
Yeah.
reminded me of, okay, no, this is worth it,
Yeah.
even though it's hard, even though I have very few readers currently. The story for me is only worth writing when I can make even one person just have a blast with it. Hear them say, I loved reading that book, or
Right.
it kept me up at night or something. And so, it's just, if you consider your options, how would I truly feel if I stopped versus how would I truly feel if I only wrote for myself? Or, is interesting to
Yeah.
really think about the answers to those questions.
Your wife has a
Because
great point.
yeah, she's very insightful. This is partially why I married her. She's the insightful one. But so here you are. You've published since 2015. I'm sure you have a lot of stories in mind. So this new series that you're writing it's intended to be a longer series. Do you have like an idea of how many books might be in it if you were to continue?
I guess just until I get tired of writing it, but at least
Okay,
three, because that's what you need to be a series. So at
true.
least three. I learned that much from the Bloodlines debacle. Um, but yeah, and then if I just enjoy writing it and the readers are enjoying it. I've always loved detective fiction, and like so there. I don't know if you did the Rex Stout, the guy who wrote all the Nero Wolfe mysteries, like in the
Oh yeah.
40s and 50s and 60s. Like I've read every one of those, and I mean there must be like 35 of them. But like the detective genre is just so easy to keep writing series, because just they just solve cases. They just kind of you can set them in time. It could all happen in the same year, like the Sue Grafton books. It's all like set in the 80s and it's just a
Mm.
series of cases. And so I love that. I that's kind of what I envisioned for this new Shapeshifter series, that she could just solve crimes eternally in the year 2020.
I mean, that's so cool though. I think that's amazing. It For me, I haven't read a lot of these books, but it's very TV show esque, right? I mean, think of how many detective crime solving TV shows. It's the exact same experience, only in book form. I probably
Mhm.
would enjoy the books better. So I'm not a huge TV watcher, but I think it's great that you set that up for yourself. So, and because you're a discovery writer, it doesn't matter. You can just keep writing until you run out of ideas or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so based on, your experience with publishing in the past and, the marketing experience, uh, what has been the most difficult part of it all for you? If you could say one thing or
Um,
multiple difficult things, you don't have to
what
pick
I was
one thing.
You know what? Well, what comes to mind first is I was just at a big event, and because I do public relations for a living, but I also write novels, and I I let those kind of worlds mix and mingle, right? So people in
Hmm.
my PR world know that I write books and stuff. So I was talking to somebody I had just met at this big event, and I mentioned that I write mystery novels, and then she's like, "Oh, who do you publish with or something?" So it's somebody who's probably not in the writing sphere
Hmm.
or whatever. And I said, "Oh, well, I publish them myself through my own company." I saw the look on her face. So when you're talking
Mm.
about hard things, I was thinking about that conversation, that moment when I'm looking at this woman's face and she is, I won't say she's judging me, but she just got a sly look like, oh, you're that kind of author. Oh, you're self-publishing, as though like my work isn't developmentally edited, proofed, professionally designed, like all, I think it's pretty high quality. I have a master's in creative writing. I mean, I've got a few skills, and um anyway, but that look, right? And I would say that look, that stigma that you still see among some people, sometimes I find that the hardest part, because I'm proud of my work, but that I'm also an impressionable person, and I have some insecurity like everybody else, and imposter syndrome like most people. And so when I see that look, it wounds a little deeper than I show on my face. And I want to defend the book. I want to go, I'm a good writer, like you. you know
Hmm.
um
But then it gets a little
it,
awkward, right? Because
yeah, you just
you
have, you
feel
can't do
this,
that.
you feel like you need to, but you're just like, I can't though, because then I just sound like a bumbling, like I don't actually know what I'm doing. So that is so challenging. I know exactly what like you're talking about. The moment you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I've talked to so many people, which is hilarious though. But then seeing the look on their face, I'm like, well, I chose to self-publish. No, at
Hmm.
least, I mean, in your case, every author who self-publishes at some point decides, no, this is what I'm going to do.
This is
It's a
what I'm gonna
decision
do.
you make. I think there's just this underlying assumption that it was your fallback plan. Like, oh, it's not working. No agents are picking me up, which, even if that
Hmm.
was the case, that's fine. You still made the decision to go through all
Hmm.
the work, and everyone who's independently published did all the things to make it happen. And anyway, it's fascinating that stigma still exists.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. So for you, um, given all of those things, it's very common for authors to have imposter syndrome or just, doubts,
Yeah.
struggles with their writing. Um, how do you cope with that when you actually come to the page and write? Like, do you have a hype up routine, or how do you continue writing despite these challenges?
I think my husband's my hype up routine, I
Okay.
think, yeah, he's just always really believed in me, and he'll be like, it just keep plugging at it, and he'll always be the one to remind me about that luck aspect, which, like, I know you've
Yeah.
talked about before, and we reflect on that. He'll be like, there's just, and he'll bring sports metaphors in, he'll bring music metaphors in, people who've gotten really lucky on their first thing out, people who had to do something 10, 15 times before they were an overnight success, right? And I've even, of course, I've heard I take some comfort from famous authors too who talk about this, like Anne Patchett, who I'm currently reading all of Anne Patchett's work.
Hmm.
And I was reading an essay about her, and she talks about, I was an overnight success on my fourth book, and she's very talented. I don't equate myself to Anne Patchett, but I certainly feel that moment. I just haven't been that overnight success yet. But she's like, here I am, I'm plugging away. I wrote 3 really good novels, but like my fourth one is the one everybody's like, oh, that's the one I've heard of. And that feeling of like, well, you pay your dues, you keep plugging away. The people who are successful in publishing and in music and in sports tend to have one thing in common, and that's persistence. They keep
Mm.
trying, and so I guess I use all that to come back to. And then finally, I do make a living writing some freelance stuff. I do like I do like a nonfiction kind of writing, corporate style
Nice.
feature stories, human interest stories. And I'll always remind myself of that. I'll go, people do pay you. They may not pay, they may not be buying your books, but other people are paying you to write stuff. So you must be okay.
I mean, I would say so. I mean, that's just like a small detail that's actually massive. Oh yeah, I actually am paid to write for I think that's awesome, right? I'm not that way. I
Yeah.
do technical stuff. I work for a tech company doing nothing related to writing, but it is encouraging to hear that. I do want to touch on what because I was listening. Do you listen to the Creative Pen by any chance? Joanna Penn. It's a
No, I don't
podcast.
know. I
Excellent.
should
If you,
check it out.
she, yes, definitely should. She is an entrepreneur, and she's a self-published, successful author. She's been going since 2008, I think. So she's full-time as an author and podcaster. But I just want to talk a little bit, say like a long time ago when the last season of Stranger Things came out. So she brought this up because the theme song for Stranger Things after that, I think it's the fourth season of Things, just
Uh,
blew up on the internet, like huge on the internet when that show came
mm.
out. And that artist was like marginally popular back in the time. Like she was, I think she was kind of popular. I can't even recall what her name was, but however many years,
Kate
20,
Bush.
30 years, huh?
Kate Bush. Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
It was
Kate Bush
Kate
TC.
Bush.
I don't see people like were aware of her, but the money that came in from the Stranger Things explosion was just wild, and it was one of those things where you never know if your book 30 years from now is going to be randomly popular. It's going to get picked up for whatever reason. I just think it's interesting, like you said, because it is material that will be there forever. And so I try to remind myself of that is when you
Mm.
publish it, it's going to be available forever. So, you know, just keep spurring it, keep trying, keep getting it out there, trying to build a name. And I think it really takes the readers. If you have readers talking about it, kind of sharing
Mhm.
with their friends and everything, and that's where that luck comes in and you get picked up. But
Right.
I just like that story. I thought that was fascinating. I didn't actually watch the fourth
I
season
like
of
that too.
Stranger Things
I didn't either. I
personally,
didn't either.
but it looked
So I'm,
interesting. The songs were great.
yeah, I'm old enough to, I mean, I had that Kate Bush album because I'm
Oh,
54. So like
you're still young.
like it was not an unknown song to me. Like it was like on my mixtapes in high school.
Oh,
But yeah, it was wonderful to hear it again and like watch people discover it and have it. It was kind of fringy. Like you had to be sort of in a new wave because really at the time, a lot of people just really like Bon Jovi, Wanted Dead or
yeah.
Alive. So the Kate Bush song
Oh,
was a
yeah.
pretty big departure from that. But yeah. Anyway,
But
but let's take heart, Dan. We'll take heart in that
yes,
story.
take heart. Exactly. I think that's the moral of the story. So that being said, you've written books in 3 months. You've written books in 10 years. The various speeds and levels. I guess what's the future of Lynn Lipinski? Lipinski. I just mispronounced your last name. I'm sorry. Lynn
I didn't
Lipinski.
even hear it.
Do you? Wow. I'm sensitive to those things because of my linguistics background. But do you have goals for books? Are you hoping to publish a certain number of books in the future, or are you just gonna keep playing it by ear and write and publish as they come?
Well, I think that it just depends on what day you ask me. I mean, I think when I started the shapeshifter mystery, I was thinking, okay, I'll write 20 books to 50K, just like they say, right? I'm going to write 20 books, and then I'll live off of these in my retirement years. And today I would tell you, well, maybe I'll get this shapeshifter novel done, and then maybe I'll get the second one done,
Hmm.
and then I'll be at 7 books because I just don't write that fast. I think you're a fast writer. I am not.
I mean,
That
I don't know
one
about
book
that.
what came really fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I have to say, part of me too, I think I might try to sell the shapeshifter one if I ever get it done. Kind of, it's just so much work to be an indie author. If someone else would take it and like do a good job, I really would be interested in that. But with that said, I've got the foundation set up. I know how to self-publish. I think a paranormal mystery might sell a little better than my non-paranormal mystery. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I will definitely finish this paranormal shapeshifter mystery set in Burbank and the Bay Area of California.
Sounds incredible. Actually, it sounds very interesting. I don't read a ton of mysteries, primarily because my TBR of fantasy and sci-fi is so big. that I don't stray
Yeah.
out super often. But congratulations. I never said this. You mentioned that you published a book on October 30th. And I just glazed
That's all
over
right.
that. I apologize. That's awesome. That what an accomplishment. There it is again. Definitely show it. This is the fourth book of the let's see, Zane Clearwater. Is that what it's called? Mystery
Yeah. Yeah.
series.
Yes.
And it's not paranormal, but it's still excellent. So keep that in mind.
It does have a
Anybody who's
little fan base. They're
okay.
adorable. I love my fans. There are people who really like Zane Clearwater. He's kind of this down on his luck guy who lives in a mobile home park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and is just trying to make a better life for him and his sister. And now he's a private detective in cryptic inheritance, so trying to help a young woman who has a Bitcoin fortune that she lost the password to. So he's trying to help her. And of course, there's a dead body because that's what we
Of
love about
course.
mysteries. There's a dead body on the first page.
On the first page, even. See, I don't write
Well,
mysteries, but
close enough.
well,
I may have exaggerated.
first chapter, and no one's gonna double.
Yeah.
No one, actually, yes, no, we want you to check Lynn on that because then you can check out her book and buy it, right? Make sure she's telling the truth. But no, it's one of those things where mystery authors, I just don't know if I have the mind for it. I'm always way impressed with mystery. And is this Zane Clearwater also one of those mysteries that you might just kind of write at the same time as your shifter? Or are you gonna kind of put this one to bed for a little while and see how you do with the shape shifting one?
I think, I mean, I just don't know if there's a huge audience beyond my dear fan base. But like the sales, I'm a little bit watching the sales on Cryptic
Yeah,
Inheritance, thinking, well, maybe it's time to just kind of move on to something else. But Dan, I've got to call you on like talking about not having the mind for mystery. I mean, to me, the idea of writing science fiction or fantasy where you have to create an entire world with its own rules, like I
I guess
don't know
that's
how you
fair.
juggle. I think a mystery is easy compared to that.
So funny to hear people because it really comes down to the way a person's mind works. I was talking to a nonfiction author the other day on my podcast, and they said the same thing. Like, I can't imagine writing fiction of any kind. I was like, I can't imagine writing a nonfiction book, just because the organization it takes. I'm not an organized person at all. Like, it's hilarious that I'm even functioning as a human adult, but I'm here and I'm alive and we've got this life. But I think for me, it comes down to fear of, this is going to sound so dumb, of research. Because the whole research, I was never really, I was a pretty good student, but I didn't love studying. I didn't love researching. In fact, the more I studied, the more I researched, the worse I did in school. So with mysteries and anything existing in the real world, the research aspect of it is so much more. I still research for my fantasy novels, but it's a little less. It's not so much like, what does this town look like? What is the environment like? Who are these people?
Mm,
It's easier just to make it up and then just research like the science or
that's true.
physics type things for fighting. And
Yeah.
so for me, that's part of the reason I don't find it too difficult. But mysteries, like I'm so fascinated with discovery writer mystery authors. I think it's so cool that you can have an ending. Like, I'd be afraid that I wouldn't even know what was going to happen at the end. But I guess
Well,
that's not
that's,
a
I guess
problem.
we all have our thing. Yeah, we all have our
Yeah.
thing.
So
The world is a
are you going to
wonderful
keep
tapestry.
writing thrillers then? So thriller mysteries? Is that where you're going to
I think
stay?
so. It's what I love. I do have a literary. If there's anyone listening to this who would like to read my foray into literary fiction, I do have a literary fiction story about a Southern Baptist family living in Oklahoma confronting race issues that I have
Wow.
been unable to do anything with, and I would not self-publish that because I think it'd be really hard to find an audience for like lit fiction about that. Um, so anyway, if anyone's interested in that, but I think otherwise, like I really love to read mysteries. It's just my favorite thing, and it's what I love to write. I just think they're so entertaining. I just don't know what
But
else I would
surely you
write.
know
I
the
don't.
genre very well because you read it a lot in it.
Yeah, yeah. Since I was a kid, I would either read, the Nancy Drew and the different ones, or the ones aimed at kids, but then also every thriller on my mother's 1970s book club of the month, book of the month club. Every book that she had. I mean, I was very I've read a lot. So I feel like I have the kind of how those plots work, like ingrained in my DNA at this point.
I mean, that's you're leveraging it to
Yeah.
right to your advantage. Does your mother love your books at least? I mean, if
Oh,
it's she
she
had a whole
does.
collection, it's right where she likes to
She
read.
does. She does love my books. She's one of my biggest fans, so I'm lucky there, her and my sister. So yeah, I'm lucky to have that kind of support. They do buy the books as well, which is nice. I need to get them to get their Amazon reviews in for Cryptic Inheritance because currently this book has no reviews on Amazon
Yet they're coming,
yet.
definitely. They'll be there. You have all the people who bought book one that just need to remember. That's where the marketing aspect comes in.
They do. Yeah.
Getting in front of readers.
Please,
I feel
yeah.
like we please, and then the luck. You just need to get toss a coin in a well or something, right? Get
Yeah,
that
I
luck
know.
aspect. But well, I appreciate you
Absolutely.
joining me today. This has been an excellent conversation. Before we end here, I always love to ask, where can people find more information about you and your books?
Oh, the best place is my website, which I updated today. It's at lynnlipinskibooks.com. That's the best place to find out anything about me, or check me out on TikTok and Insta.
I feel like you are a very successful social media person compared to myself. I've enjoyed your social media posts.
Are you?
So
Uh,
I think we've
I
been
just,
following
I
each
mean,
other for a while, right? Sorry, continue.
I was going to say that just that, I mean, I think you were in that first group of people I followed. Like, I think of you as actually a friend, like my TikTok friend,
Yeah,
which is kind of funny because it's the first time we've really ever talked.
that's true.
But like when you reached out, I was like, oh, of course, Dan's like my friend. And I was like, well, TikTok friend. I mean, he's
That's
like, I'm
so
not sure you've ever
funny.
spoken to him directly, but
Yeah.
sure.
It feels like we have though, which is so funny because you watch
Yeah,
so many videos. I've seen so many of your videos,
right.
and commented on them and really enjoyed the. I remember the whole Disney blow up stint. If you don't know what that is, go on TikTok. Lynn is going to sell her books to Disney. Just go check it out on TikTok. But yeah, it is funny how that is. There's a lot of personable aspects to video. I think really makes it feel like someone is your
Yeah,
friend or you know them well. So yeah, this is their first time
right.
speaking. That's kind of funny. But yeah, I'll make sure to have your link in the show notes and put your TikTok and everything in
Awesome.
there as well so people can find you. But thank you so much for today. It's been great.
It's been awesome. Thanks for having me, Dan.
I hope you found that interesting and encouraging. I mean, there's something to be said about talking realistically and speaking to other authors who have gone through their challenges and recognize, where there might have been failures in their decisions. I know I have plenty of those. And just talking about, well, how can we move forward? What are ways to think about it a different way? How can we be more positive from a learning perspective so we can take this and run with it and turn it into something else? So my conversation with Lynn was just really enlightening. I really enjoyed her. She's an excellent person. And I hope you got that from her as well. Hopefully you have some new ideas as well on how you might be able to market and write your books. So next week I'll be talking to Jake Lynch. He is an author of a quite epic, I'll say, of a fiction book that has narratives around mental health challenges. So it's a really interesting conversation. We talk a lot about leveraging your passion. So he talks a little bit about his almost like a divine intervention, which got him to write this book, how that pushed him forward, considering he never ever thought he'd be an author. It was not a passion of his. He wasn't one of those people that wanted to write his entire life, just had this inspiration, felt like he had to write it. And so he put his head down and got to work. So, really amazing conversation. I hope you'll be able to join me for that next week. So, of course, if you have any questions for me or if you'd like to join me on the podcast, of course, head to thecasualauthor.com. So, just like it sounds, you can fill out the pitch form there if you'd like to join me, or of course, share with your friends and family. I appreciate any reviews or likes and shares that you can send over my way. Definitely helps me reach more people. I hope you have a wonderful beginning of new year, and I'm looking forward to talking to you next week.